Welcome home, where we provide information, inspiration, and motivator after motivator after motivator here on America's Next. I have Demetrius Napolitano with us here today. How you doing, Demetrius?
I'm doing well. You said my name right. Great job.
Yeah, that's always important to say somebody's name properly. And the reason why I am proficient at that is because when I was younger and I learned how to read and write, I was always encouraged to read things in every possible way that you think they could be read, and then choose the one that sounds the best. So that's a little exercise that I do when I look at people's names. And more times than not, I am correct. I am correct. Very happy to hear you to have you here on the show today, and we're going to get right into it. I got to tell. Are you meditating?
Yeah. You know, it's so funny. I was having a conversation with my homegirl yesterday, and in the middle of our conversation, I just stopped to deep breathe. And she was like, "Are you meditating right now?" I said, "Yeah, I was recentering myself with connecting to my breath." So, in a short answer, yes, I was.
That's excellent. That's excellent. You know, I was gonna tell everybody that during pre-production, you literally started meditating, but you're still meditating. And we're going to talk about that today as well. That's going to be a very important part of this conversation. But long before we get there, I want to know where you're from. Where you're from, Demetrius?
Yeah. So born and raised in Harlem, New York, and I spent up until 13 in Harlem, and then from 13 to 22, I was living in Brooklyn throughout Brooklyn and different parts of Brooklyn, and then I moved back to Harlem at 22, where I've been living for the past 3 years, and back where I was born.
Okay. What was life like for you early? I'm talking 5 years old in Harlem. What was that like? Walk me through a day in Harlem at 5 years old for you. What did it look like? What did it taste like? What did it smell like?
Yeah, so I would definitely say that I didn't have the typical early childhood experience as far as what you think a 5-year-old would experience. You know, just running through the street, ice cream, happy days, sunny days, even when it's rainy, it's sunny days. I grew up in the foster care system, so at 5 years old, I was acting out different symptoms of ADHD, of trauma, pain, of hurt, of confusion because of the things I experienced before. So yes, there were moments where life wasn't as hard, but the typical day of a 5-year-old in my shoes, at least, I felt a lot of pain. I smelled grief, if you will, and but I saw promise. Well, not really, not in that moment, but yeah.
If you can, talk to me about some of the world of experiences that you had before 5 years old. You said that by the time you were 5, you were already in foster care. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. What do you remember before 5? Because you seem like the type of person who could remember a little bit before the age of 5.
Yeah. So, we jumping into the abyss of the ocean. Okay. Right. So before 5 years old, very, very few positive memories, I would say. One of my first memories is might have been 3 years old. I was in a foster home, and one of the ways that she disciplined us, it was in Far Rockaway. One of the ways she disciplined us was she kept us in the basement. She would have us do handstands for a moment of time, and I guess the more severe form of discipline would be putting hot rice on the ground and making us walk across it. For years, I thought this was a dream until my older brother confirmed, like, no, that's what really happened to us. So when you say pre-5, these are the memories that come to mind. Yeah, and then one positive memory of my mom walking with her through Harlem, and all I remember is her long black fingers and me looking at them. But I talk about scent. I remember the smell of a cigarette, and I remember thinking to myself at that age, or just feeling like, oh, that smell, I don't like that smell. So that's more of a positive memory, if you will.
Mm-hmm. How old were you when you went into foster care?
Yeah, so I was about maybe 2 years old.
Okay.
So, yeah, but my earliest memories are in foster care.
Right. Okay. Did you ever discover why you went into foster care?
Yeah. So first, I would say that my parents, they love their children and me deeply. My mother Okima and my father Terry. But at that age, during the crack epidemic, they succumbed to the drug addiction, and because they was helpless in that way, they got addicted to it, and it was hard for them to be a parent and to love us and care for us. So they fell in that rabbit hole, if you will. And so I was put into prison, not yet, but I was put into foster care because my parents, the inability to care for my older brothers and I, and my two older sisters, and they had a drug addiction and neglect.
You're the youngest.
I am the baby. Yeah, I'm the youngest.
How did you feel in elementary school when you would be, learning about drugs in the community? You might have been watching a video about the crack epidemic and its reality, and the push was to get you to say no to drugs. And so, you might be in an English class, and they'll say, "Hey guys, today in this English class, we're gonna watch a video about drugs." Did that ever happen to you?
To be 100% honest, I don't recall those memories.
Okay.
I do remember drugs being part of my early childhood as far as those who are around me, but as far as learning about it in school, those are very faint, so I can't recall anything in this moment.
Okay. So at what point did you realize that your life was being impacted by drugs?
Oh, this is a really good question. So I think I was 8 years old, and one of my former teachers said to me, she said, I think I was acting out, or maybe I was just being a little hyper, if you will, like a child, like a normal 8-year-old, 7-year-old would be. And she said to me, Tasharon, are you on your medication? So Tasharon is my biological name, Tasharon Taylor. And when I got adopted at 10, my adopted mother changed it to Demetrius Johnson. So and up until that point, actually up until high school, everyone called me Tasharon. So this principal, the teacher said to me, she said, Tasharon, are you on your medication? And I knew I was aware that I was taking medication at that time. I was taking Adderall and Ritalin specifically. But I wasn't aware of its effects on my psyche, my body, and such, my being. And when she said that, it was like a moment, like a light bulb went off in my head. And it was like, oh, so these drugs control me. And it was at that moment that I made a conscious decision in my heart at 8, maybe 9 years old, where I said I would no longer take these medications. So when my adopted mother would give them to me, I would hide them in my tongue, and then when she wasn't looking, I would spit them out. But that's the first time I became aware of drugs and medication in my life.
Did you ever feel negative symptoms from the medicines that you were taking?
Negative in the sense that did I feel controlled? Yes, I felt controlled. I felt that I didn't have control over myself. And I mean, growing up in the foster care system, I always felt like I couldn't have a normal 5-year-old experience. So I always felt under someone's foot, if you will. And I use that expression because that's how I felt at that age. And so, but as far as, that was it. Yeah.
I'm asking you how you process this, because in my perspective, I can't imagine why an 8-year-old will be on medications for their behavior. And I'm wondering why nobody said, why don't we, expose him to new things? Why don't we, teach him different behavioral techniques that will allow him to have a better behavioral disposition? I'm wondering why nobody said, hey, why don't we teach him, how to act differently if we think that he should act differently? Why were you on medication at 8 years old? That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Really good point. And I think mainly because at that age, I had so much trauma, so much pain, and I acted out in ways that folks just thought it wasn't normal. And so the first solution that they went to was, oh, we're going to drug him up. We're going to subdue him and control him this way, instead of really taking the time out to really understand. And of course, I was a shy and isolated kid, and that's because of how I was raised. But if you kept knocking on my door, eventually I opened up to you. But no one more or less took that extra amount of time. It was just, hey, give him this medication. This is the solution.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that you were more of an introvert or more of an extrovert when you were younger?
Yeah, that's funny. So I was more or less an introvert, and then I kind of grew into being an extrovert. But
Okay.
being an introvert, also because I was ostracized, I was put into the corner. I was mostly away from the other kids, and so that kind of cultivated that introvert in me. And then as I grew up and began traveling to different foster homes and meeting different people, then that cultivated the extrovert in me.
How many foster homes were you in all?
And in all, it was approximately 30.
Did you say 30?
30, yes, 30.
Incredible. Incredible, because you probably can't remember living in one place for more than 2 years when you were growing up. Would you say that?
I heard that the longest that I ever was with a family was during my adoption period, was when I moved into my adopted mother's home, who would later adopt me at 10. I moved to her home when I was 5, and then I left when I was 13. So it was a solid 7 years. But after that, there was no time I was with the family. Two was most. The year 2 was the most.
Right. How did it feel moving from place to place like that?
You lose your self-value.
Wow.
When people discard you when they feel like that they have they're done with you, and that they don't want nothing to do with you. They just, you get passed on. And so because of how folks are treating you, you begin to internalize that yourself, and you begin to have lack of self confidence.
So when you're moving around from place to place, it causes you to have self-esteem issues.
Yes, very deeply, very deeply.
Do you feel a level of rejection when you have to move from one place to another, some type of way?
Yes, that's. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Absolutely.
So middle school for you, when everybody's a comedian in middle school, middle school must have been tough for you.
Yeah, it was interesting because I was in the same middle school for PS 108, which is on 108th and Madison. So I was in a school from, I think, pre-K or kindergarten to 8th grade. And so I had already fostered a deep connection with the teachers and everyone there. Folks knew more or less that I was in foster care, and that it didn't excuse my behavior, but it helped them understand, like, oh, this young man is in foster care. He's been neglected. He's been abused in various ways. So when I'm punching walls, when I'm screaming down the halls, and I'm acting out and kicking this, and I'm throwing tantrums, folks can understand why I'm acting this way. So middle school, in that regard, it was challenging because a lot of what went home I took out in school, especially because school was somewhat of a safe haven for me. But as far as making friends, as far as connecting with my fellow classmates and women and girls, and that was all good. So I had somewhat of a normal middle school, but I also had this other component to me, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, without a doubt. And then I want to know, where were your brothers and sisters while you were, moving from place to place?
Yeah. So biologically, I'm the youngest. I have 2 older brothers and 2 older sisters. At this time, my oldest brother, he was in prison, so he had to do about 8 years for. And then my other brother, my middle brother, his father took him out of the picture when we entered the foster care system. So he was with us for a few years, and then he moved down south. And so then my oldest sister, who I didn't actually know existed until I was 16, she lived in LA. She moved to LA right when I was a baby. And then my other sister, who lived with my mom, my middle sister, she, at that time in her life, had her own, she's like maybe 10 years older than me. She had her own things going on. So my siblings all had their own challenges, if you will, that they were facing, that unfortunately kind of pushed their attention from focusing on me. And then also, once again, I was in foster care. So.
Right. Also, everybody was not in foster care?
Nay. So funny story, not funny, but it's interesting. So when ACS or BCW at that time came to pick us up at my mom's house to take us away. My oldest sister, my second oldest sister, because remember, my oldest sister was already out the picture. She moved to California, so she's out the picture. She doesn't return until I'm 16. But my second oldest sister, she had went to the store. And so BCW, she was under 18, so they would have taken her too, but she wasn't in the house yet, just so happened to go to the store. So me and my two older brothers, they took us. And so me and my two older brothers, we went through the foster care system. My oldest sister, she was in California, and my second sister remained in Harlem with my mom because ACS, BCW didn't take her because she wasn't home.
So they just, it's like they just came in there and took whoever they could take.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah.
Was there any exchange between your parents and the social workers when they came and took you guys? What was that like?
Yeah, so I don't have a memory of that.
Right. Yeah, you were pretty young. Yeah.
I don't remember.
Okay. And so you're going through foster care, and I mean, you must have felt like a little kid in a real big world, just moving from place to place.
More or less, yeah.
Wow. So what was at what point did you start realizing that you wanted to make your life a positive outcome? How old were you when you decided to make that choice?
Yeah, so that was when years later, after I re-entered the foster care system at 13, because my biological mother died when I was 10, and it was crazy. The day before we was going to see her, I went to my mom's house for the first time in many years, and I didn't even recognize the woman who opened the door, who was my second sister. And we were going to see my mom the next day, and we found out that night she died. And so years later, 13 years old, my yearning for my mom began to surface. And so I was now a teenager. I'm already feeling neglected in the house. I'm being verbally, physically, in some cases, I was sexually abused and mentally abused, etc. And so now I begin acting out. And so at 13, with some events happening at that time, I was placed back into the foster care system. And so from 13 to 22, that's when I went through that major period of going through all of those homes, 25 in exact, five homes before my adopted mother's home at 5. And so the point that I began to change was when I was 15 and I was in this non-secure detention called Boys Town. And I remember the judge said to me, she said, "Demetrius, if you go into this facility and you act up, you will be placed inside of a secure detention." And it was at this moment where I reached out. I didn't have no friends, I didn't have no family. Reached out to my adopted mother and I said, "Grandma, I'm locked up." And she said, "Sharon, you wanted the world, now you have it." So it was like, "Oh, I'm already down, you're kicking me further down." And I would have, between all the anger, the neglect, all of the emotional trauma that I had, I would be in jail right now because I would have channeled that anger in such a destructive way that it would have been self-destructive. Then I would have brought destruction to society. But had it not been for my social worker who believed in me, who pulled me out of the ashes of darkness, if you will, and just kept reminding me, like, "Demetrius, I'm here for you. I'm here for you. I'm here with you." And so when I was released from the juvenile detention right before my 16th birthday, yeah, I still had lows and whatnot, but that was like when something went off. It was like, okay, I can make a difference. I have this woman who is consistent and she sees something in me that I don't see in myself. It's time to discover that.
Was there any other people besides the social worker who were like a positive voice in your ear?
Yeah, so before her, during my coming up years, when I was in elementary school, middle school, I had certain teachers that were very inspirational. One, Miss Risa, who passed away not too long ago, but she was my teacher from 4th grade to 8th grade. And one of the first white women who really showed me that she genuinely cared about me and didn't care what my skin was, what was my background. And she really believed in me and always told me and continued. She would advocate for me when no one else would. And so it was a few teachers at my former school, Pure Son Way. But when I re-entered the system at 13 and that's when I moved to Brooklyn, I had too many people doubting me, too many people not believing in me. And it was my social worker who was the one person who believed in me. Everyone else who have now believed me came down the road.
When you were witnessing how much people did not believe in you, did that, before you made your behavioral change, your decision to be a positive person, because that was a conscious decision, When you notice people doubting you or thinking that you were never going to be anything and stuff like that, did that make you angrier and angrier?
Yeah, I mean, it fueled anger, it fueled confusion, it fueled hatred, of self-hatred. It fueled uh, feeling as if I'm unloved and all of those emotions. So, I mean, when the whole world doesn't believe in you and everyone, at least in your immediate circumference, looks down on you, eventually, when you look, you don't even look in the mirror no more because you too busy looking down on yourself. So, yeah.
Wow. Now, I want to know, at what point did you begin to look in the mirror to see if what they were saying was actually true? Did you ever look in the mirror to validate or invalidate the lies that people were telling you about yourself?
Yeah, so I would do it slowly when I started sharing my story and started when this was 16 when I uh, began to re-enroll in high school, and then I started getting on this organization called We Deserve Love Too, which is run by a really good friend of mine. And he gave me, named Jamel Robinson, he gave me a platform to share my story. And I began to share this painful story. And sometimes I would break down in tears in the middle of a speech, and sometimes couldn't even feel like I could speak. But it was a place of healing, and you know, the applause and the sympathy, empathy I got received from people began to slowly change the perception of myself. But it was really years later, as I got deeper into meditation and my accomplishments more or less began to stack up on each other, where I was like, oh, those were lies. I got this. You feel me? So, and now it's like, that's so behind me that, you know.
You've overcome that.
Yo, that's a whole fact.
and you know, but I also think that young people will be watching this episode at some point in the future. And if you don't know, I'm going to tell you, I've been in a similar situation as yours. I also spent years of my life in foster care. And I remember literally looking in the mirror after I had heard so many different negative comments and negative opinions about who I was and what I was going to be. I remember actually using the mirror to look into myself to kind of find the positivity, to find, you know, the truth about myself. And I'm asking you if you ever did that. It sounds like you were saying yes.
I'm sorry, the computer like did a little freeze. You heard me more or less?
It's okay. No, I didn't hear your answer.
What I said was I didn't really look into the mirror until years later, but because there was so much self-doubt that once again you can't look in something that you have learned to hate, you know.
Okay, but social workers and different people in your school community, they were encouraging. They kind of was like a whisper in your ear that no, don't listen to all the negativity. There's something great in there that you need to hold on to.
Yeah. So, and that was really when I started to change, because I started to see that for myself.
Right. Without a doubt. What would you say to a young person who's in foster care, or just a young person who is either in foster care or a young person who is not in foster care but still having a tough life? What would you advise them right now?
I would say the first step is really to learn to love yourself and to be patient with that process. Because once you love yourself and you deeply love yourself, and it's a whole process, it helps you prepare for any storm. And when people say things about you, when folks walk out of your life, when things don't necessarily go your way, you always can reconnect with yourself and you know, kind of like, yo, Demetrius, I got you. You feel what I'm saying? Like, always, that self-love is so important. It will help you get through anything that you face.
How can you love yourself? Like you said, you didn't even think about getting into that mirror because of the amount of negativity that people were putting towards you. How do you love yourself? You're a young kid, you're a high school kid right now. Like, what do they need to do? How can they do it? Do they wrap their arms around themselves? They do positive self-talk?
As all of that and above. I think the first thing, it definitely is, looking in the mirror. Looking in the mirror and just looking at the reflection you see in return. And just allowing, any negative, and especially because at that point, maybe some negative thoughts will come to mind. So the first thing you say, let's say, if you're looking in the mirror, then there's a thought, oh, your face is wrinkly, or look at that ugly face. Nope, change it. Oh, I'm beautiful. Come on, talk about that self-affirmation. If you don't believe it at first, keep saying it until it becomes second nature and in your belief. And through time, right? Through being patient with yourself, and you begin to have a deeper self-love and be gentle with yourself. When you mess up, when you fall short of whatever standard or standard that you set, or the world, whatever the case may be, just always be patient and be gentle with yourself. Sometimes I'm hard on myself. I'm like, yo, D, you got it. Keep your head up. Love you. And that helps a lot.
Without a doubt. We have to figure out how to get into our higher selves in life. When you're able to get into your higher self, and for those of us who might not know what that means, getting into your higher self is not paying as much attention to things that are happening around you, and paying more attention to positive messages quite often that are really in your mind, because you are a great entity. You're somebody's son, you're somebody's daughter, and that in itself is beautiful. And you have to begin to tap into those positive messages that are truly there in your mind, as opposed to listening to the things that are being told to you sometimes.
Absolutely.
So how did it feel? How did it feel when you got ready to graduate high school? Tell me, did you go to prom? When did you get your driver's license? Do you have a driver's license? Because I know a lot of New Yorkers, they're like, I don't need to drive, man.
Yeah. So to the question, yes, I have my driver's license, and I'm grateful for that. I felt the first time, but the second time I was determined to pass that test. And I remember when I was parallel parking and I was doing my backup, I had hit the curve. And for a second, I was like, oh, I failed. And I said, nope, no, you're not. I told the driver, I said, can I just do this again? He said, sure, yeah. Pulled out. Was like, I'm going to pass this test. Then did my little U-turn and then got back. Then he said, hey, 15 points. You won. You passed. And then the first question you said was what?
I said, did you go to prom?
Oh, yeah, prom. High school. Nay. I didn't go to high school prom. I ended up going to 5 different high schools, and then eventually, partially because of all of the homes I've moved to, and then the last high school I went to, I don't think they even had a prom. But I was extremely proud and grateful to have walked across that stage, and it was probably when I walked across St. John's and the NYU stage, that proud, or that self-proud, or proud of myself, if you will. It grew. But yes, that was the beginning of like, oh, I'm not what they said I was. I got it,
So education was a way of breaking through glass ceilings for you.
Yeah. Especially, I always loved to read. So reading was, I got a few pictures of me as a young child, and most of all those pictures, I'm in some book. So reading was an escape for me to get away from all of whatever was going on in the world that I lived in. So reading was a way to get away from all of this and not focus on it. So I just always was in a book somewhere. Sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are talking to Demetrius Napolitano. He's a great man, and his story is tremendous. He's been through a whole variety of experiences, and most importantly, he's overcome them. This man right here is an overcomer, and we're going to talk more about that after a brief message. America's Next Motivator. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern. Tuesday and Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern. America's Next Motivator. Hosted by me, Cedric Riley, and sponsored by the Pride Empowerment Network. And we're back. Demetrius, during that brief break, I couldn't help but to imagine how strong you have to be to have went through all those different experiences in your life and still be standing on the other side of it today. There are people who take a step back and look at your story and say, he's a miracle. He is a miracle. How do you feel about that?
That's very interesting. So I heard the story real fast that when my mom, before she even was pregnant with me, after having 4 kids, she was in this bank, and there was it was the security guard whose gun accidentally went off, and the bullet went through the wall and it pierced my mom's near her pelvic area, and basically the doctor said she wasn't going to have any more babies. And then I think a year or 2 later, or 3 years, I was conceived. And so there's that part of it that I'm like, doctor said you wasn't going to have no children, and here I am. So I thank God. And secondly, I think that I was always destined for this. And I say that because everything that I went through, now in hindsight, right? Steve Jobs once said you can only connect the dots looking backwards. And so when I look back, I'm like, oh, all of those things had to happen so that I have the understanding, the strength, the grace, the wisdom, the knowledge, and all of that to now give and bear fruit and to help others. So a miracle, blessed, lucky, grateful, they're all synonymous to me.
Mm-hmm. You believe that based off what Steve Jobs said, that hindsight is 20/20.
What does that mean?
Well, it means that you can see things more clearly after they've already happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so and the reason why I asked that is because it's important when you've gotten on the other side of experiences to look back and comb through them and make sure that if there were lessons in there, that you're able to pull them out. Because a lot of the time, the things that we go through when we're actually going through them, all we feel is the trauma. You felt the burn of the cigarette. You felt the heat of the pavement. You felt the cold of the snow on your bare hands. But when you get a little bit older and you look back on the situation and you look at the rules that all these different people were living by and the way that they were conducting their households, you realize I was experiencing more than abuse, neglect, and dependency. I was also looking at lessons in life, and you start reevaluating, the things that you had been learning all along the way. It's like, I learned a lot in those 30 foster homes. You know what I'm saying? And so that's why they say hindsight is 20/20, because hey, when you fresh out of high school, it's like, listen, I've been hurt. You understand? And my mind is all over the place, if you will. And so you might put on a facade of positivity or a facade of humor, but deep down inside, you're still trying to understand what just happened. And it's important for us at some point to look back on what happened and gain a sense of clarity about it. So the phrase hindsight is 20/20 is very key for people who've been through some things. Now, Demetrius, I want to know, because you said you spent a lot of time in books. What were some of the books you remember using as a way to get through the things you went through?
Yeah, the first book that comes to mind, 2 books come to mind. First one is A Child Called It. And long story short, it's about a young man. At that time, he's a much older fella, but he writes about how growing up in something similar to foster home.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I hear you now.
Sorry, can you hear me?
I hear you now.
Yeah. So good to this boy so that he wouldn't tell the neglect and the pain that he was going through. So he was so happy. So when the social worker came, you saw this little happy kid. And then as soon as they left, she get back in that corner, flip.
Wow.
And the Given Tree also stood with me, but basically that whole message was, no matter, you can always give in life. You can always give in life. So yeah, those 2 books come to mind.
Sure. Okay. What was the title of the second book? You were breaking up a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's called the Giving Tree. The Giving Tree.
Okay, the Giving Tree. The Giving Tree. You know, we have a couple comments in the building that we're gonna put on the screen there for you to observe. Other people are in the building today. Ani King says, "Wow, long time no see, Demetrius. It's been a long time. It's great to see you sharing your story."
Appreciate that.
And then we also have Yolanda Riley who says, "Amazing story. You're inspiring people tonight." And Corinne Riley says, "Wow, what was the changing point for you?" You know, that actually is a great segue into the next portion of this conversation. Are you still here with us?
Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
What was the changing point for me? It was when I was going to this was going to be the beginning of my transition to getting deeper into the criminal justice.
Demetrius, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. So
okay.
What I was basically, go ahead, what do you want to say? Huh?
Well, I just want to say maybe we should pause a little bit and see if the connection will get a little bit stronger because we're not hearing a lot of what you're saying.
Okay.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us, I want you to take some time and possibly share this stream out. Take this time to like and follow America's Next Motivator page on Facebook. And remember, you can also find our show on E360 TV, on Roku TV, Android TV, Apple TV, and YouTube. So we're all over, and we'd like to be found because this will continue to be a place for inspiration, education, and motivation. And we're here today with Demetrius Napolitano. You all right?
Yeah, I'm great. I really appreciate you can say my name, and especially Napolitano time. You know, so I appreciate it.
Yeah. So we had a question in the building. Corinne Riley wants to know what was the changing point for you? Because today, my brother, you have so much zen and you have so much for real.
I'm still working on that.
Yeah, you got the zen just beaming off of you. You got the positive frequencies just radiating off of you. You know, so talk about that. When did you start ascending to that extent?
Yeah, so at first it takes some time. It took a long time, and I'm still ascending. I'm still growing every single day. But the turning point for me was when I was in this non-secure detention, and as I was saying before the computer went astray, was that it was a moment where I was deeply depressed. I was deeply feeling damaged. I was dealing with a lot of pain, and I would have continued that segue into getting deeper into the criminal justice system had it not been for one person. And that one person was my social worker, who I will never forget these words. And I say it when I give my speeches. When I told her, I said, "Miss Ince, just leave me like everyone else did." She said, "Wow. Demetrius, you will leave me before I ever leave you." And it was at that moment, we talk about the previous negative statements that folks said so deeply said to me, that what they said, those negative comments that folks said to me that resonated so deeply in my heart. When she said those words, that no matter what you go through, I will not leave you. It was like, oh, no matter what I can do, I can lie, I can do X, Y, and Z. You're still going to stay by my side. So that was the moment I began to turn around, and I re-enrolled in high school, eventually graduated through. This is when more people started coming on my ship and helping me start to see they saw.
Wow.
Okay.
Let's give it a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, I also want to take this time to appreciate everybody who continues to support our show. As you know, this is a live show. And so sometimes we have technical difficulties live on air, and you're a part of that experience. So I don't take it lightly when you guys decide to be a continued supporter of America's Next Motivator, because when you support us, you're supporting grassroots, organic, powerful media. Stay tuned. Also, feel free to drop a comment, drop a question if you have one, so that we can get to those. And also, let me know how we're doing. You know, you guys could also look me up through the America's Next Motivator Facebook page or my actual Facebook page. Find me at Cedric Riley or Cedric Speaks on Facebook. Comb through my videos. I've said much there. And get into a chat with me. Let's see if we can build, okay? All right, Demetrius, we back?
Hey. As soon as we get.
Okay.
Not the best. Patience,
all right.
Patience.
Yep, we gotta have.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. This is the age we live. Hey, this is the age we live in. We have to roll with the technological age we're in. Yeah. So I want to know. At some point, did you start traveling the world?
Yeah. So the first time I left the country was when I was 20, and I went with a mentor who I met after a speech I gave after presenting a policy paper on adoption subsidy fraud to Congress. I met this mentor at a speech, and he was so captivated by my speech and my story that he said, I would love for you to come speak to the high school students that I fund in South Africa. And so I flew to South Africa with him and spoke to about almost maybe 100 students from I would say elementary school up to high school. That was the first time, and then I studied abroad in Ghana through NYU, and then I just came back from India, where I spent 9 months studying yoga and meditation.
You went through that quickly, and I appreciate that, but there was a lot there. You first of all, you started speaking, you started telling your story. I think that's huge. You actually started speaking and telling your story to different crowds of people. Is that right?
Yeah, so I started, as I mentioned before, I started when I was 16, and I jumped on who was a mentor at that time, was now like a brother. I jumped on his organization, We Deserve Love Too, and it was the first platform for me to share my story of growing up in the foster care system. And from there, it's like the domino effect. I would go to one event and share the story. Someone was like so moved and inspired. They say, hey, come speak at this event. And then it just kept growing. And then I began to become a better speaker, and to the opportunities that flew me across the world.
Wow. What was it like when you touched down on the continent of Africa, and what did you learn there?
Yeah, so the first time I went, which was South Africa, I'll never forget this. When I got off the airplane, security guard, a brother, he said, welcome home. He gave me a hug. Wow. And it was the most genuine moment one of the most genuine moments in my life. And one of the things I learned, especially, I was only in South Africa for 10 days. I was in Johannesburg, and then I was in Port Elizabeth. And what I learned there was, in that part, was that the perception that, or the image that America creates of Africa, when they create Africa as one place, when it's 52 different countries, and within those countries that is as diverse as the trees. But I learned there that those images that America created were not factual, actually, but instead it's a beautiful scenery. The people are beautiful. The food is rich in flavor and love, and so that was the first time. And then when I studied abroad in Ghana, this is where I was 4 months in. So I had the opportunity to get deep into studying and learning about different cultures. And that was there that I started growing my hair out. And then it was India where I decided to lock my hair. Okay, so you went from Africa to India. Yeah. Now let's talk about I'm trying to be brief and fast because I don't want the computer to start bugging out again. It's all right. Appreciate you. Yeah. What was India like? Yeah, so I went to India to study yoga and meditation, really to find myself. No, as I noted on Facebook a couple of months ago while I was in India, I said I came to India thinking I was coming to find myself. I realized when I got here, I'm here to create myself. And that's exactly what that journey was. It was for me, once again, to bring it back to the first segment, with all the self-doubt, all the self-hate, all of the hatred that I got from the neglect that I received from the world, it was so deeply embedded in me that I walked through life with that same hatred and self-doubt. So India it was time to go get away from everyone and everything and go work on Demetrius, work on deepening my love of self, deepening and understanding myself, and coming to a place of peace with self.
Right, right. Did you meet other people who were essentially masters of meditation and transcendence in India?
So I met folks from all spectrums of life, and each person in their own way was a teacher to me. Mm-hmm. And I'm grateful because I know that I've been grateful to be a teacher to others. I've met, yeah. So as far as the transcendental meditation, nay, but I studied Vipassana meditation, which was a 10-day retreat of no phone, meditating from 4:30 in the morning to 9 o'clock at night, no conversation with folks, and which Vipassana is insight. So we are bringing all of our attention within ourselves, within the world within.
Right. Okay. And how has meditation impacted you as a man?
Yeah, so meditation, beautiful, very beautiful question. Meditation has impacted me in so many different ways, but it has taught me more than anything to love and accept myself. And of this current moment. 1 second. Can you hear me?
Yes. You want to come back on your other device?
My phone?
Yep. Come back on your other device.
I'll do that right now.
All right. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So we're having a great discussion with Demetrius Napolitano, and we're going to allow him to call back in on his phone because his phone seems to have had a clearer connection, and I want everybody to be able to hear what he's saying clearly, particularly as we finish up here. So I just want to say thanks again, everybody, for tuning in today and being a part of this man's journey and his story, because it's truly a testimony. All right. Okay, Demetrius. So I want to ask you, we were talking about how did meditation impact you as a man? What did you learn from it? What did you gain from it?
Yeah, so I learned through meditation to first be patient with myself. I've learned to accept myself and to love myself. It has taught me, like I said, I do Vipassana meditation, which is insight, which means bringing the attention to different sensations you have in your body. And I've learned that everything that is happening to us is nothing is permanent. Everything is changing. So, and when you remember this, that everything is changing, that you don't get glued to any sensation or any feeling. You just kind of allow life you just go with life, if you will. And so it taught me more, like, once again, it taught me to love myself. It taught me to accept, to be patient, to be gentle with myself. It has strengthened my focus. It has strengthened my discipline. It has strengthened my ability to be empathetic because I'm more in touch with myself and how I feel, so I can be more empathetic towards others who are suffering. Yeah.
How did it feel when you discovered your inner world?
I realized that it's a beautiful place, right? And it's a beautiful place not because it's just a whole bunch of roses. It's a beautiful place because there's darkness inside. There is light. There is everything in between, the good and bad. And so it was like, oh, part of loving yourself is accepting you in your entirety.
Sure. You know, one thing that I realized as I went through life was that, like, my inner being was a place to discover. Like, that was something that I needed to discover. I never imagined that there was also a place, and all the places in the world, that inside of me was also a place that I needed to discover. That was absolutely huge for me. And I have to let young people out there know, and adults too. Hey, your inside is a place that you need to get to know. And meditation is a way for you to get to do that.
Very much so.
Yep. So what do you do these days? What are you into professionally? And where have you gotten your life to at this point?
Yeah, great question. So what I do now, so I'm in the process of building my a nonprofit called Fostering Meditation, and the goal is to help at-risk youth in foster care, and, to help them meditate, to teach them wholeness, to teach them to love themselves through mindfulness, through meditation, through yoga, and I'm in the process of building that. And my one of my visions is that I we hire and we train other young people in foster care to go back to their communities and to help the population that they can connect to the greatest. I mean, young people in foster care, they suffer from PTSD, trauma, anxiety at the same to the same degree that folks who come back from combat suffer with. And so
Wow.
there is a dire need, and I'm sure you can relate to this. There's a dire need for young people to find ways out of, let's say, the medication that pharmaceutical companies are overprescribing, especially Black children, at far more alarming rates to once. And I was an example. So wanting to bring them an alternative to, because we can't, wanting to bring them an alternative, and that is meditation, that is mindfulness, that is letting them know that you don't have to cope with this trauma that is not there to defeat you, but you can make peace with it by digging deeper into your inside. Yeah, am I making sense? I'm getting
You're making a
passionate.
lot of sense. You're making a lot of sense. A lot of sense. What is your yeah? See, when you start going into the zone like that, when you start unlocking that inner heart, that is the key to the flow of wisdom that our community needs, my brother. So when you start getting deep like that, that's exactly why this platform exists, man. So I commend you for being willing to dig deep into yourself to pull out those sound bites because young people and adults need to hear the things that you're talking about. There's people out there who never given meditation a chance. Not only did you get into the meditation, you read the books, you took the art form seriously, and now it's helping you to manage what was once an unmanageable life. So you, my friend, you're a hero. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, how can they find you?
Yeah, so just my name, Demetrius Napolitano, Facebook, Instagram, and other things. I want to say this real fast. So I start my mornings at 4 o'clock in the morning. I wake up at 4. I meditate for an hour, then I do yoga for 2 hours. And someone said to me yesterday, actually a few people said, they said, Demetrius, why do you wake up so early, like 4 o'clock, right? And I said to them, well, first I've been programmed by my Vipassana, which is my meditation that I did in India. So we woke up at 4 o'clock, was meditating by 4:30. We went all the way to 9 p.m. And so my body clock wakes up at 4. But also, and more importantly, the work that I'm doing, which is teaching mindfulness with meditation and such, and teaching wellness, I can't do if I don't take time for Demetrius. If I don't take time to pour into myself, I'm dealing with trauma, I'm dealing with depression, I'm faced with anxiety, both within and without. So I can't you can't pour from an empty vase. So the first 2 hours, 3 hours in the morning, I take that time just to connect with myself. No phone, no social media, no news, just connecting to that world within. And then after I've connected to the world within, then I go out in the world and I can pour into other people's cups. I can take on their trauma. I can take on their anxiety and such and respond in a peaceful and loving way, for more or less. I still get
Sure.
tested,
So as we wrap up this conversation, and I'm very very proud of you, sir. I just have 3 questions for you, and I'd like for you to answer them. The first question is, what is survival to you?
Survival? Damn, okay. What is survival to me? Mm, I don't know why, but the first thing I'm thinking about is to breathe, right? You can't survive if you can't breathe. So
Right.
we got to connect to your breath. We got to make sure that the air that we're breathing is not terribly polluted, that it is refreshing for our lungs. Go try it. You can go a week without food or so, much longer. You can go a couple of days without water. Try to go 30 seconds without your breath. So that's the first thing. To survive means to breathe. Ooh,
There you go. There you go.
breathe.
So
I got you.
yeah, our viewership out there, I want you to look into the art of breathing. It's a huge science. Okay. My second question for you is, what is success to you?
Yeah, what a success to me. Really being able, first and foremost, having peace within myself. I forget which rapper said it, but he said, when I was a kid, I admired people who were rich. Now that I got rich, I admire people who have peace. That's the first thing. So success means to me is having that inner peace, and then making sure that I can provide for my family and those around me, and which also includes those in need. So having just enough resources where I can have for myself and my family, and then give to others.
Okay. And what is greatness to
you? Greatness means to me following in the steps of Jesus, following in the steps of Buddha, Muhammad, all of the prophets that came before us and showed us what compassion is, what humility is, what staying close to God and living a life of service is. So living in a life that's in accordance with my deepest principles, and living a life ultimately of service, because we are all here, as Jesus once said. And I'm no Christian. I don't ascribe to any religion, but I pull from them. But he said, and this is, the greatest man, the Son of God. He says, I didn't come here to be served. I came here to serve. Right. So that's greatness to me, being able to serve people.
Without a doubt.
And having the resources to do so.
Without a doubt. Well said. Demetrius, I want to respect you tonight. I want to let you know that I commend your work, and I honor your journey, your willingness to overcome the things that you went through. I'll give you your crown this evening, and I'm letting the world know that you are one of America's next motivators.
Appreciate that a lot.
Absolutely. Welcome to the Pride Empowerment Network, and I appreciate your time today. I'll talk to you later, okay, Demetrius? Everybody, this has been another great installment of America's Next Motivator. Today was Demetrius Napolitano. Tomorrow, we have another gentleman who's had an incredible journey with another incredible outcome. Thanks so much for being here with us today.